January meeting of the Board of Water Commissioners called to order. Reading of the minutes of the previous meeting. Any
I find no problem with that.
motion to accept?
I have a couple of things that I'd like to maybe bring up that we need to have clarified.
Okay.
The first is when it talks about management raises, could we add a sentence that actually states what the raises are?
Where's that in the back
It's
page
the
here?
fourth from the bottom, fourth paragraph from the bottom.
Okay,
It just is a motion, it's not incorrect.
just want more specificity on
Yeah, just a sentence
it.
there.
Raises
Mhm.
of,
January 1, 2019, 2%, January 1, 2020, 2%, and January 1, 21, 2%. It's just easier.
January 1, 2019, 2020, and 2021?
Yeah, it was through your contract.
Okay.
Yeah.
Finally.
Right. Well, yes.
okay, so you got that? Good?
Yeah, and the other two items, it's not really a correction to the minutes, but for the two people, Mr. Traverso that came in last month and Ms. Martinez, basically it says there's no action to be taken at this time. And I know maybe that's what was even said to him, but I'd like us to have a motion because that implies that he can come back anytime and maybe the board will take some action.
Okay, so,
So maybe in tonight's meeting, we could pass a resolution that says his request to have his bill adjusted is denied. Because he came back after that, after the meeting, and we had a conversation. So, I'm sorry, that was my only comments about the minutes.
okay, so I have a motion to accept with modifications.
I'll make the motion.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, those in favor?
All right.
Opposed?
I'm abstaining.
Okay.
I wasn't here last time.
Okay. Presentation of bills and accounts.
I'll make a motion to accept the bills and accounts as presented.
Second.
Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Cooper Lake improvements?
Okay. I have some material for everybody if they want to read it. We have 60% design documents. And let me just sort of skim over the letter here that he sent us. He sent us the design documents, 60% design documents. And it's in a pretty thick notebook, but there's really only 60 pages of text. The rest of they're all appendices, and so it's not as daunting as it looks. Previous presentations to the board utilized an Association for the Advancement of Cost Engineering Class 4 feasibility estimate of $5.7 million based on the value of $2015. So they've escalated that value to 2020 value, and that 5.7 million becomes 6.6. Now, as a result of the 60% design milestone, our updated 60% AACE Class 2 cost estimate, so we went from a Class 4 to a Class 2, which means there's more specificity, is $8.8 million. I don't think I really need to say much more than that. So I would like everyone, I have copies of, I can send this to anyone who wants it electronically, but I also have just the text, if you want to read it. Dennis, I have a copy of one of these, a complete one if you want it.
Okay.
Or would you rather have that?
This is fine. You're reviewing this, and who else has been reviewing this?
Okay, we'll give you a copy, yes, I only got these the other day. We'll certainly look at it. The staff is looking at it. I had a conversation with Greg, a couple of them the other day. And essentially, we need to have obviously we have to have a meeting. We're looking at having another risk management meeting like we had previously on the maybe the 23rd. We haven't nailed down the date yet because he's got 7 people coming from all over the East Coast, and we don't.
Do we pay for that?
Oh, it's included in his design fee. So the design, we're on budget on the design fee, okay?
Just that, I mean, Bob and I sat through it, and there was an awful lot of expensive engineers sitting around that room for a whole day. It just
Yes, there was.
boggled my mind.
That we were paying for every last one of them to be there. I did the same, I was like, wow.
And what value do they add to the process, all these engineers?
Well, there's probably 7 we're looking at. This is a multidisciplinary project. So the CDM folks are there because they're actually doing the design of the piping and maintenance of our plant operations during this whole project. And Schnabel, they're the engineering experts for the dam work. So, I mean, I think a project of this magnitude, it's to be represented by your design team. Typically today, most major projects have it's not 1 or 2 guys that sit down and do it. It's you have the guy that does computational fluid dynamics, and he works with the person that does this, and everybody's specialized.
But they all come to the meeting to give their 2 cents.
In this case, we're not gonna have everybody there. And some of their guys are gonna call in on the phone, just because,
But that's what I was really raising, do they all need to be at the meeting?
no.
Okay. But you're paying for every single body by the hour.
That's true. Well, and you're
And
paying for
the
them
travel
on,
costs.
and you're gonna pay for them whether they're here or they're in Virginia Beach on the phone. Their per hour rate, but you're also gonna pay all the associated travel expenses. Most of their people, the good news is most of their people are either from Albany, Clifton Park, or Westchester, Pennsylvania, which is not that big a stretch. Well, we have some choices to make. So as Greg and I discussed it, his first comment to me was, maybe we should have a conversation, you should have a conversation with the board ahead of time. What do they really want to pay for this project? Nothing.
It's a silly question.
No, well, he didn't mean it that way.
Yeah.
He's actually a very, very serious and capable guy, but what he was trying to suggest is embedded in that $8.8 million figure, there are some things that could be done differently, and they need to explain what the risk and the reward is for doing it that way. And one of the examples that we talked about was, so we know now that one of the deficiencies is the dam is much too steep. So to be legal, maybe it has to go to a 1 in 3 slope. But if they did a 1 in 3.5, it might be much more easily mowable, and we could maintain it better. Be less risk to our people. There's a cost associated with going above and beyond. They need to explain that to us, and we need to make the decision.
Is that already in this estimate? No, so that's
No.
more.
There are things like that that they've made choices and design choices on our behalf, but they really need to explain to us where we have the ability to either say yes to those costs, yeah, it's worthwhile to do that, or no, it's not. And one of the obvious things that we have is the ability not to, sorry about this, not to raise the dam 5 feet to take on that possible 5 feet expansion. I mean, that's an option. So they're going to explain all that to us when we have this meeting. And then at some point, I think they'll have to maybe come to a board meeting, because I know, they're going to have a meeting in the middle of the day. Joanne, you can't come unless it's a day that you're
It's
not there.
off. Yeah, I'm off. There's a week after next is Regents Week, so I have a little flexibility with that week.
On the 23rd.
The 23rd is my birthday.
Ah,
Although we can't be then.
Well, you just can't be doing this.
We can't be doing this on your
But
birthday.
it is during Regents Week.
Wow, that worked out.
Yeah,
maybe.
that week I do a flexibility. I have my own exam, I have to proctor, and I have another, so we can figure something
Okay.
out possibly.
Well, I will let everyone know what the real date is, and I'm also going to try to have it here to make it easier for people to come and go. When you're right at the plant, you kind of get locked in there.
I think it's true.
I mean, I didn't leave those guys till 9:30 that night. It was like,
And I think when they do present to us, they also need okay, if we're gonna go this way, then what's the cost?
Yeah.
Because part of the increase in costs is due to more representative accounting of material volumes.
Well, because they know now what they're designing, so they know how much material and how much fill they're bringing in, as opposed to before. So as they get closer to more of the design complete, they can be more specific about what it is.
Just hope, that isn't, this is 2.1 million more. This is,
I know,
yeah, yeah.
it's,
This also includes raising the west dike by 5 feet?
no,
Okay.
no.
So I was wondering how they, when we took that tour, I was kind of looking at that
That's
west dike.
another additional cost.
That's additional cost. But
That's
the
phase
one
two.
thing that we had instructed them to do was to design it to raise the well house, so that we wouldn't have to raise the dam, but we could just take care of the other and deal with it. And maybe that's a cost that we just can't afford right now. So it's all, in here to be discussed.
We're also waiting to hear back where that risk reward, you said somewhere between 3 and 5 or something?
They've already made a decision, which I'm not willing to accept just yet.
What is their decision?
Their decision was to drop it 10 feet, to start 10 feet down.
No, but how high were they gonna, they made it seem like to get whatever we needed to do, it wasn't necessarily, we all kind of said 5 feet to raise the well house,
I'm
but at
sorry.
some point in time, they
Right.
said, well, it may not have to be 5 feet, it could be 4, it could be 3.5.
Correct.
And
Correct, and I don't know where they are
Yeah,
within that
okay.
discussion. That's true. I don't know.
Because theoretically,
You could be, you're right,
if
it could
it's
be.
3 feet or 3.5 feet or 4
Then
feet,
why are we
then,
raising it 5?
and there's less
Right, good point.
material,
Right.
I'm assuming, because you're not going up that extra foot.
Right.
Everything impacts everything else, so.
Was that the concept of raising the house 5 feet, was that in the event we eventually wanted to do
That's
that
it.
final high raise?
That's the maximum you could ever raise the lake without moving Route 212.
Right.
So
But we were at the midpoint, we never went to that point.
we never went anywhere. We never decided to increase the capacity whatsoever in this project. Just allow the new well house to be constructed so that it wouldn't have to be reconstructed in an eventual raise.
But at some point in time, they were gonna figure out
Yes, they
what the
were.
maximum, he just threw out the number of 5 based upon the preliminary investigations, and now that we're getting more the class 2 as opposed to the class 4, they should be having a better understanding about how high can we really
Yeah,
go.
you're right. He did specifically say that to us.
Right, and that was kind of like the next big issue that we were waiting to hear back from them, and it might be,
It might,
might be
yeah.
in there?
No, I mean,
You looked through it and you haven't seen
I
it.
read this, I know, so.
Now raising the water capacity in the dam,
Yeah.
about raising the wall, are there any studies that show any kind of climate projections going forward that may include droughts where you want more water, or growth of Ulster County and the
Yes,
use
there
of
are.
and the use of the water? We have those.
I got a grant based on one of them, sure.
Okay.
The projection is that we're gonna have more rain. It's gonna be more often intense storms, and they're gonna happen more in the winter when there's less ground cover. So you're gonna have more turbidity loading in the streams as a result. A lot of this work was done by New York City. It's all peer reviewed, so it's not just a pie in the sky kind of thing. It's a legitimate study. And that shows that the turbidity loading in the streams is gonna increase. So, and at times when that already occurs, we have to shut the intake right down. We can't treat that water.
Right.
So it could have long-term impacts. So if you had a bigger storage facility, you could weather those storms, as it were, from turbid event to turbid event. But we weren't dealing with that right now.
But actually, I think some of the data that we were working on back, especially with the Niagara stuff, was that we were actually seeing more yearly rainfall
Oh, definitely.
than less.
Let's.
Absolutely.
And you can never predict the drought,
No.
but in regards to, are we seeing a decline in the annual amount? No, we're seeing an increase in the yearly amount of rain we're getting.
But we're getting a lot of 10 and 11 inch November, December, and October months. which is pretty weird. I mean, considering our history, so.
And at what point in time do we try to ramp up talking to the politicians or somebody to figure out where we
Get the money.
get money? I mean, we had a couple of options out there about trying to sell Reservoir
I think,
2-in-1,
you had conversations maybe about that
Yeah, more recently.
more recently with DEC,
They're still interested.
that they're interested, they're just not,
There's, well,
they're just busy, I think is really what it comes down to,
okay.
so. I also have, within that document, this is the timeline, and you're welcome to, I actually hate these Gantt charts. Basically what this has done is, we're on schedule, which is 60%. We should have 90% design documents by June, final design in November. Permitting will be concurrently with, this next phase of the design work. We'll be able to go to bid this November, award in February, and start construction in March of 2020, and it's a 2-year construction cycle. So so that's kind of where we are with the finances. I blew this up because the copy that you have in here
So small.
is small, so if anybody wants one, you're welcome to take one of those. And I summarized the time schedule on there because reading those makes me crazy.
So Judy, if it's not gonna be completed until another, you said 2020? It's not gonna be the end point.
November of 21.
2021. So
So why would
So
we
the
do
$2,020. So
$2,020?
the dollars are not working again. We're gonna have another issue. And did it go all the way back to 2015 when they first gave us the, wow,
We've been talking about this a long time.
oh,
1961.
It was first back a long time. Good point.
1961.
good point,
Yeah.
good point.
Yes.
Well, actually, we started when we had movement in,
Well, that's the recent.
Well, that's push.
right, that was what started the process.
The original engineering report the board looked at was 1961. It talked about raising the dam for several reasons.
Right.
And now the push is from the state.
Because they changed the dam regulation.
Yes.
And there's no push to
Damn,
increase the
damn.
capacity. Back then, if you look at the 61 report, the whole push was, we were gonna have 60,000 people
That's
living in the
right.
city of Kingston now. And those projections never materialized. And then low flow toilets happened. So demand actually kind of went down. But now you have the climate change thing pushing, and, I don't,
What year did we max out with the number of people in the city? Do you know, Steve?
30s.
yeah, a long
30s?
time
It was,
ago. I mean,
it was like 30,000, right, was our
Yeah, I mean,
population,
and I
top
think the
population?
population was larger even when, Roundout was separate from.
Right, two
I mean,
separate
so back in
villages.
the 1800s, I mean, our
Yeah.
population, if we would have combined Kingston back then earlier, it would have been much larger.
Okay.
What's the population now?
For the census, 23,456. But it's.
And that's down from 30,000
It's down,
people that I can remember.
But more
No.
people live there than that. I mean, the census is
Yes.
under count. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we're, in the 25,000 range pretty easily.
Do you have any kind of projections for future growth?
I mean, I think that the new census will show that, we have stabilized and are probably adding people. Small, but I think that,
We're not losing people.
I don't think we're gonna be showing any loss of population, if we count everybody. And that depends
And
a
that's
lot
the
on
big thing,
And
if
that
you count everybody.
depends on how the census goes this time around.
Well, we're trying to reduce the count.
Yes.
I think everybody else can probably claim that same thing, right? That they're not counting everybody, especially with,
I think it's particularly more challenging though in cities.
Yeah,
Mm.
you have more people in apartments,
Right.
people move
I
around.
mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
every city,
Yeah.
medium, large, are gonna have the same issue that,
Yeah.
Well, now that the state has changed dam regulations, which is moving us to deal with this,
Right.
are they gonna give us money for this?
No.
It's like the circle over here.
Yeah, exactly.
They come and tell, they're gonna do it, and we have to pay for the infrastructure cost.
I mean, we can try to go back and, I mean, that's where we need to talk to our politicians.
Right.
I mean, we had those conversations a year and a half ago or so that we met with Amador and Cahill up there,
Right.
Right.
and they said they would look into it, but, you know, like anything else, it was, you know,
Out the door.
yeah.
Well, one of the
But-
drivers in getting them all to say no, that we won't fund this project, we'll fund all these other projects, because they only have there's a certain amount of money that's available, and these projects are such high dollar value that you could sweep these funds with 2 or 3 projects. So they like to spread the money around a little bit, and their theory is, well, we won't give you money for this, but we'll give you money for this, this, and then this, and then you can afford to do the other. It's kind of a reverse left.
So if we had to go out for bonding, we would have to go out for bonding for
$8.5 million.
probably more.
No.
By the time it's all done. And that would cause us to raise the rates.
A rule of thumb from talking to John Toohey is, I think, $1 million borrowed is about a $90,000 payment a year. So you're probably talking $800,000 annual bond payment. Budget's $4.7 million.
$40,000 increase is 1% normally, right?
42, something like that, yeah.
So it's 2% for 100,000, 2 times 8 is
Right.
16,
It's a big rate increase.
16% rate increase.
Mhm.
And have you heard back at all, is this an issue or not an issue with the other water supplies in New York State that have dams? I mean, we tried to approach that way back when we were first dealing with this. Because I mean,
It doesn't-
we have a big,
It doesn't seem to, I mean, it doesn't, I talked to these guys,
no one else.
Troy, doesn't seem to be a problem for them, they've already done their work. Maybe they have some unique circumstances, I don't know, Monroe County Water Authority, I just think the ones that I've talked to are all bigger than us in this, you
Were
know,
the
dollar.
reservoirs newer?
No,
No?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm trying to figure, I mean, our problem is our reservoir is 100 years old or whatever.
All the dams are the
And they
same.
were all built, I'm assuming they were built according to standard 100 years ago, and
Right.
now the standard's changed, and
I think almost all the dams in the state are around the same age, they're all the same
they're all
construction.
probably in the same slope, and they all have to be
Right.
upgraded.
And if we just told them we can't do it, we can't afford to do it, what would happen? Is there any thing that they could do,
They give us an order on consent and force us to do it.
and what if we don't do it?
We'd have to raise water rates, that's what their thinking is, that's.
Well, we
our-
could,
if we-
I mean, that's the
that,
solution too, is
yeah.
just
You got an answer for that?
And we
force
don't-
a political issue.
Yeah, we don't want
Right,
to,
I
we
mean,
have
we
to
say,
figure out another way
we say
to
we
do
can't,
it,
we
so.
just can't afford to raise the water rate 16%
Yeah.
to do this.
Yeah.
And we're not doing it. What can they do to us?
Well, yeah, they'll take an action against us, and then you'll
Fine
negotiate.
you on a daily basis.
If you don't pay it?
If you don't pay it,
Well, that's a good question.
well, you have to pay because you're a governmental entity. It's
Well,
not like you can just ignore it. If you don't, you're not gonna pass your accounting standards each year.
And what happens?
Well, you guys will probably get in trouble, you'll probably be removed, could be charged,
For,
malfeasance.
if they say to remove the small ones.
Well, it
And
could be
so-
more serious than that.
Bring in some new people, and
And
they'll
who-
pass
and who would-
25% increase.
And who would take on
It's
the,
more likely they take over the system,
they take over the system?
more likely.
And so, if that came to pass, they'd have to fix it
And raise the rates.
and raise the
Yeah.
rates.
Do it, so.
But it wouldn't be local people, raising the rates on your friends and neighbors.
It's a life safety,
It'd be Big Brother.
it's a life safety issue though.
I
I mean,
understand it.
you know,
I mean, it's just a question.
You don't have that luxury.
We don't have that luxury.
And I
Okay.
think we do have some options that we can possibly come up with some of the money, hopefully. We can look into some things,
hopefully,
yeah, hopefully, right?
but
Sell the other reservoirs.
that'd be a little bit, that'd be a drop in the bucket, but yes, it would,
Well,
but every drop helps.
Every drop
That's
counts.
right, that's right. So there,
And so what's the political fallout, Mayor, if we raise the rate 16%? To pay,
I mean, I think that,
We're an
you know,
independent body, but I understand, it impact you.
I mean, I think that whenever, you know, you look at making large capital investments, I mean, I think that you have to look at what are the benefits. And I think that even with the school district, I mean, when they got the district voters to approve spending $137 million on a campus, I mean, that is raising all of our rates forever. You know?
And your children and grandchildren.
Yeah, and so like that's a long-term investment, and I think for us, you know, we won't have to fix this dam for a very, very long time after this, we hope. And so it's a matter of, you know, trying to have the most cost-efficient project that meets the safety and welfare. I mean, we all don't want to be on the board if the dam ever let loose and killed people,
No.
right? Because
No.
we didn't want to spend the money
No.
to fix it. And so we have to weigh all of those, you know, and I think that when you look at rates, I think that you guys have already looked at, you know, different rate structures, and, you know, if we have to, you know, look at how we're gonna afford to do this, it may make us look at all of our rates more closely and all of our structures more closely to figure out, you know, and using the expertise of the office here to figure out how are we going to be able to build a rate package that isn't a 16% increase in 1 year to be able to allow us to do this.
I think as we get closer to the end, when we really know,
What's the cost
I mean,
is.
we've thrown out stuff about what the increases were gonna be because of this, you know, but when it really comes down to the point where we have to make a decision, I mean, some of that pressure hopefully will go back onto some of our politicians. Maybe they can find some state grants or something for us,
To help us
you know,
out.
special thing, just say, you know.
The other
I
thing.
know Cato came and got $1 million for Deed Stadium a number of years ago.
Right.
You know, because again, the Deed Stadium turf and the thing was falling apart, and all of a sudden, it was graduation, I think year 2000, that's how long ago it was now. I think my son graduated, because he ended up being a speaker, and he came in and said, and here's $1 million from the state, they had just passed the budget, you know, for Deed Stadium, a grant for Deed Stadium, you know, so, you know, when we get down to the point where it's really becoming an issue, you know, hopefully maybe.
Well, and I guess we really have to think through a very good communication
I was
strategy.
just gonna say.
But to be able to communicate to the elected officials as well as the
Our ratepayers.
members of our community about what is going on.
When you talk about the value of water, what they get for what they pay,
It's very-
nobody wants rate increases of any kind, but a 16% rate increase on your water bill is a little different than a 16% rate increase on taxes or something else. The total absolute value of
Well,
it.
it's not that in the long.
And I think the value of water, people, we need to do more to educate people on what we actually do for them and what goes into getting that water to come out of the tap the way it is.
And there's not a 16% increase on the sewer tax either, just the water. And actually, I think your rates competitively throughout the state
We are.
are quite reasonable.
We are, we have done that exercise. But we need to maybe do a little more public outreach than we do.
Oh, I think so. If when push comes to shove,
Right.
at the end of the day,
Yeah.
we really have to get out and do some community outreach.
We do.
Well, we
And
don't have to
wholesome-
raise a
wholesome-
16% increase immediately, we could do it in pieces.
And that's what I think the mayor's
Right.
objective was.
But we still should be holding some.
Kind of look
community-
toward that goal
Yeah.
Wholesome
Kind of
community.
We kind of did that even
this year.
last year or whatever, where we kind of rounded off whatever that increase was, and we put $100,000 set aside into capital fund. So, I mean, we do have some money in the capital fund
Yeah,
to
to get us started.
pay for some of it, maybe some of the engineering, some of
Right.
it. Okay, all good news.
Well, there's sort of, it's really good news. The tenants
Start
are
off
out,
very
they're out of the
positive.
house.
Okay,
Their stuff isn't, but they are. So,
not that some of the people here don't even know who the tenants are.
that's right. We have a house.
Live the house by the dam.
Yes, and that is, they have moved,
Did they lose out of state?
no, they moved to Phoenicia, it's almost out of state.
Yeah, there you go.
It's almost. Yes, they moved to an apartment near their granddaughter. And, but there's 80 years worth of accumulated stuff in the house that they're having some trouble going from house to. Anyway, we're working, Debbie's working with them.
When did he retire?
Oh, he promised me he'd be out of the house by 2010.
Okay.
Probably 2008 maybe.
It's been a long process, Harold.
But you gotta.
I remember we talked about this.
What?
You have to
a long
keep
time
snakes
ago.
out of the house.
We
We
found
did, we did. We're gonna need a
Done.
dumpster.
Snakes are gone?
I don't know, I haven't,
Are we tearing down the house?
I don't know what we're gonna do with the house.
Tear it down.
I mean, you got the heat working.
The heat's on, the heat's
Because
on.
I mean, the other option would have been just to
Rake it.
shut the water off, right?
Well,
Drain
it's-
everything?
Yeah.
Is it a stone house?
No, it's a wood finish.
So we can't even sell the,
It's on the clattering, which is under the asbestos shingles. I keep talking, it's gonna get better. I think we probably need to look at it structurally, and we may want to consider using it as the office for the buildings project. It may be good for that. It depends on how well the oil burner holds up.
it's all very depressing tonight.
So-
Let's move on to something happy.
It's January.
It's a new year, for God's sakes.
Okay, moving on then, right? The Scada System.
Kickoff meeting is the 17th of January at the filter plant. I'm very excited about that. And the day before, on the afternoon of the 16th, is our meeting with DEP at the Ashokan Headworks to talk about what we need to give them for the permit, for our permanent, to have a standing permit for water supply from the Ashokan. So all those things are in play.
Always buy I know it's probably not any cheaper, it's probably more expensive, but abandon Cooper Lake and just buy our water from New York City.
It's way too expensive.
Save that $8.8 million and
It's, every million gallons is about $1,500. It gets expensive.
okay. Binnewater UPS.
We're still having issues with them, but Jim was very successful in having an offline conversation with the head of the company, the design company. And I think after that conversation, I think both Jim and I are hopeful that this is going to get resolved quickly, because the owner's paying positive attention to this and has said in his 40 years of practice, he has never had an errors and omissions claim. He's not about to start now, and he will get
This is the engineering,
Yes,
the engineer we
Yes.
hired?
CDI,
his boss,
the
the guy who owns the
president
company.
of the
Right.
company is involved.
And one of the things that they're requesting of Mitsubishi is a 6-month extension, because there's questions about how this thing is performing, because it shut down 2 more times on us. Derek was standing right there. But there's something wrong with the unit. I think Jim is pretty convinced, and maybe Jan is as well. So, we're getting there.
And it's not on the Central Hudson side, because you were trying to talk to Central Hudson, right?
Central Hudson still will not give us a written report without a subpoena. That's their policy. I don't like their policy, but that's their policy. However, I did speak to, thanks to Lindsay's contact information, the guy said, there is no report to give you. You could subpoena me all day. He said, there is no report. There was a squirrel that got electrocuted, and that's what caused your outage. We don't write those up. I'm like, okay. So that's all. We have all the information that they have.
But the 2 more shutdowns,
They happened. Derek actually created those. He was there with the generator guy. We have a service that comes with us on generators. And a generator that size that only runs once a week and hardly ever runs under a load, you have to, about once a year, you come up and you load bank test that. So you run that generator under a load. The guy brings a suitcase full of resistors, kind of, and they test it. And so in order to do that, he could have shut the power off at the main breaker, like he typically does. Or on the new UPS, there's a test mode that you can test it on. And he pushed the test mode and the damn thing bypassed again. So after he said I got over the initial shock, and I looked at some of the codes, I thought about it for a minute. He said, I did it again. And then I did it again. So he's able to recreate this issue, which is of some value.
Right.
So,
So they can come up here and actually
And figure out
walk out and say, here's,
yes, this is
you
what
do
it
this, here's what
Right, so
happens.
that's been good.
And this is the fourth time since it was installed.
Yeah,
Shut
well, the second time it shut down, I mean, he created them in rapid succession.
But before that, we had 2
We had,
times.
we had one
One
time that I'm aware of that it shut down, and that was when the squirrel made its demise. So, yes.
Transmission main rehab project.
We got comments back as I reported last month, and CDM, they're all reasonable. CDM is working on satisfying those comments and is gonna resubmit it, and then I would expect we'll have approvals. But because of the holidays between the last meeting and this meeting, that hasn't been done yet.
Are we still trying to get that project done this year?
If we're gonna do Cooper Lake, then next year, this project has to, the 2 projects can't happen at the same time. So yes, I'm reasonably optimistic that we can get this.
Let's get this one done and push for like back a year if we have to.
No argument, but I mean, they just, because they're gonna constrain the system to get them both done,
Right.
they can't be done at the same time.
It'd be better to have this one done anyway, I think.
It absolutely would. This is the one that logically we should do
This is the one
first.
we're working off a grant also.
Correct. No, I think this can reasonably be bid and constructed this year. Tom's, when they come up on the 16th and the 17th, we'll go over that as well.
Okay. Meter replacement.
I haven't done anything on that because I'm waiting on Johnson Controls to have this meeting so they can show us their new numbers. And they haven't contacted me to schedule that again. But absent that, I'm gonna get something together on our end for next month. You know, what the costs are and what we'd have to do, and sit down with John and John Toohey, and see how he wants to do that.
Have they given you some idea of what the new proposal is gonna be about? What are they taking out? What are they putting in?
Initially, I was skeptical because they talked about changing the statistics. Right, which means, that's, you know, smoke and mirrors kind of thing. However, the gentleman got his dates and he showed up right before Christmas. So I chatted with him for about a half hour, and he said that instead of, if our meters tested to be 94% accurate, they only claimed credit of like 91. And so if they actually claim 94, you know, that kind of thing. But the guy said, you know, I'm a finance guy, and I said, well, these numbers don't make sense. I said, my staff doesn't need to know about statistics, they just need to know what they see. And the 66 meters that you changed, we're not seeing any improvement. So until that happens, he goes, I hear you. And I think that he said, I'm glad I screwed up on the dates. I want to come back, and I'm not going to come back unless I can give you real numbers that make sense economically. So we'll see what happens.
Are we sending them new data as we
They
get
haven't
it?
asked for any. I mean, whatever they ask for, we send them. Jane is really good about that. The data, frankly, is not that hard to send them.
Right.
We have it. It's
When was the last time she sent them any updated information, do you know?
a few months ago.
Okay, so I mean, so we have probably a whole another quarter of data.
Oh, and I mean, I don't even have to ask her. If she saw a trend, she'd come knocking on my door. She'd be yelling. You'd hear her downstairs. So she's looking at those numbers all the time on those
Okay, so
those
she's not
accounts.
seeing
No,
any big increases
we
in-
just sent out 1A, right? 1A today. It got mailed out today. So when they did this push-pull, when they did those, they picked these numbers, they picked these meters randomly, but they're heavily loaded in zones 1, 2, 3, and not too many in 4, 5, and 6. Don't know why that was, but that's just the way when you look at them, that's the way it is. So we will have another couple, yeah, you're right, we just.
Yeah, because the stuff that you gave us the last time that I looked at was only like 2 quarters worth of
No,
data.
we're probably 4 quarters now.
Yeah, and so, I mean, it's kind of hard to say if you're not seeing an increase because.
We're coming up on a
maybe-
year because we did it in March.
So 4 quarters really gives you some real data.
Right.
Right. And so we're coming up on that. So another couple of months we'll have it.
Gets away from that seasonal
Exactly.
modification
Right.
thing, yeah.
Most of these, I don't think there's much seasonal variation, but you never know. There could be. You don't live in those houses, you don't know what people do or where they go.
You know, at this point in time, we haven't sent them any money either.
No, that's why there's no mad rush.
Okay.
Okay, rules and regs.
It's a pleasure here. Because everyone had, we gave everybody,
Yeah, last week I didn't bring my
That's
copy.
okay. That's all right.
I mean,
And this is what you sent me on that
Yeah.
email?
Yes, I did.
Yes, I reviewed those,
Yeah.
and they look fine.
Everything's okay.
yeah, I mean, I don't think I had any other
The staff,
updated stuff or.
staff's reviewed them before we sent them. They're just, they've accomplished a couple things. At Dennis's insistence, we reorganized them. They kind of grew ad hoc. As new regulations came on, they just got added in.
It's
And
tagged
so
on.
you had to look 6 places to find stuff about rates, and now it's,
Some of it repeated
Oh,
because.
Yeah.
so he took a lot of time and we went through and we eliminated all those repeats and kind of combined things, and Bill, you've looked at them.
I never believe this.
Right,
No,
and,
they look good.
right, and they make sense. It will help the staff because you like to be able to tell people you can't do that and this is why. Or you can do that and this is why.
And you can give it to them.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
You
mean,
can hand it out.
right.
I mean, do we
It's good to have.
routinely send this out to, I don't know, the plumbers, I guess, or the ones you normally interface with?
I would just post it on the website.
We do, that's where it is.
And that's
Um,
all we have to
Do
do.
you have to publish it?
What?
Do you have to publish it in the newspapers? Have you ever done that? When you have a new set of rules and regulations?
No, I've never done that, but
You could
we
do
could
it.
do it, just do it.
I'm not recommending you do, I didn't know whether we did it before. I don't.
Not-
I would just put it on the website.
Not that I'm
It's
aware of.
there.
We put a notice out on the website, and we can put this on the website, and as well as on, and it's always available in the office.
Right.
Eventually, when the city code gets updated the next time, this gets incorporated in the city code. As, I think we're maybe chapter 392 in the city code. And then it'll get renumbered to conform with their
I
codes.
assume that you know almost all the people, the plumbers and people who are
Mhm.
regular users.
Well, yeah, the plumbers don't do, yeah, we do, yes, the plumbers, there's a lot of plumbers on the list, we only deal with a handful
Right.
that do that kind of work. Yeah, no,
You could just send them a notice that the rules and regs have changed.
Yep.
And go-
Yeah,
go to
that's
the
what
web-
I mean,
go to the
can't be that many
website.
of, you must have a list from the last couple of years of who you deal with, it must be this.
Oh, the city has a list of plumbers, licensed plumbers, it's on the building department's website. There's
Maybe
probably
just-
60 names on that list. And you can go, some of them are inactive, you can eliminate those, and you can send them to the people that we deal with. There's some that are out of town you'll never see again.
All right.
That's all right, we can do that.
And it's in a notice, and go to the website, we have,
Put it on the website.
we revised the rules and
Right.
regs. Please go on the website and take a look at them, see how they're effective.
One of the
It has to be
things-
one place, so
Yes.
that if we
Yes.
miss somebody,
Yes,
it's
Right.
there.
It's
yes.
there.
And it's much easier to refer a customer that you're having a disagreement with. Well, what do you mean? And you say, well, there it is, and go look at it, not that.
Exactly.
It's
We
much
had a
easier.
little book, didn't we, at one time?
We did, before we had internet, yeah, we did, we published it in a little book. We could do that again, we'd self-publish it, actually.
Yeah.
Make it available in the office,
Just
for
go
anybody
that
who
way,
wanted a
yeah.
hard copy.
No,
But-
we need to go out, special printing, and just do it in-house if we need to.
Well, that's what we did, that's,
Yeah.
we did it before we had a bifold thing, we made a cover and stapled them all together. It wasn't a big deal. But I think with the internet now, it's much easier to post it on the internet.
Okay, so we need a motion to accept or approve.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion accept, was it revised rules and
Revised
regulations?
rules and regs.
Make a motion.
Okay.
I will second.
Any further, any more discussion? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Now, do we also have
You did a very good job on
Well, it took too long, but thank you.
it. No, you did a very good job.
You want effective date of that?
Effective,
Motion.
Effective immediately.
Today's
The
date,
motion is revised rules and regulations effective, what date you can put in?
how about January 9th?
Yeah.
Richard Nixon's birthday.
January.
Day after I was president.
You usually send a card, did you use to send it? It's in your calendar.
It was my grandmother's birthday.
we also have to do anything with the fee schedule then? In regards to that one
We should.
inactive,
$25.
Yeah, to add that to our existing fee schedule.
so does that need to be a motion too?
Maybe a separate motion, sure. You
Okay.
established all those fees, we can't do that in the office.
Okay.
Right, so,
Right, the board has to do that.
I mean, we need to add that to the current fee schedule.
That's the,
Yes.
yes, that's the only thing that is not in the current fee schedule, and that
Article
is,
39 of the rules and regs
right,
require a quarterly fee for an inactive service connection.
right, for an account where the meter has been removed, but they are still physically connected to the system.
Okay. And so there was a proposal of that fee to be,
How much is the fee?
well, we don't have one now because it's a new
We're
rule
proposing
Okay.
$25.
Okay.
And that,
per,
per quarter, per account, and Matt has estimated that'll bring us another $18,000.
Wow.
okay, so I guess we need a motion.
I move that we have a fee for $25 for accounts where the meter has been removed per quarter, and that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a motion, do I have a second? Bob?
Bob?
And the effective date for that will be the second quarter of 19? or-
Yeah,
Yeah.
make it the second quarter of 2019, because you've already billed for the first quarter of.
So is there a particular date when that occurs, or,
With
I don't know.
the second quarter of 2019 bill,
okay,
you can say
Or
that
say,
now.
yeah, second quarter 2000.
still,
Yeah, that'll give Jane,
Kind of get it ready.
it will because, well, first of all, we're a little shorthanded in the office right now, because Kevin is now our meter reader, and that seems to be working out, but Matt and Jane are pretty busy.
okay, so I have a
A motion.
motion, I have a second. Do we vote on that? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I would put that on the internet
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
right away. You may want to put a notice in the paper for that, actually, because, and give people a notice that way. I would just put a small notice in the
Okay,
paper.
we can do that.
Uh,
We can do that.
And I would have copies of that notice at the
We'll
front,
have that at the counter.
at the counter, exactly.
And we have an ability to put a little blurb on the bill. I'll talk to Jane about that tomorrow. It was very small, limited, but we could actually have that printed on all the bills.
Starting in the second
Right,
quarter.
where we've missed 1A, they just went out the door.
Right.
But we have, and that's of the 8,000 bills, that's 1,500. But we have 1B all the way through 6 that we can
I
still
would
do.
do that too.
So we'll do that too.
So the difference right now is that those accounts are not getting
They're not getting
billed anything.
Anything.
They're not even getting a bill.
No.
So in the second quarter, they're actually, for
Gonna
that
get a
quarter,
bill.
they're gonna get a bill, a piece of paper that says they owe
It's true.
$25.
And it's not that many accounts, we could, since we have until the second quarter, we could send something to those
We can
customers.
send
Send
those.
a
Directly
notice,
to those
a letter or
customers.
something,
Do a
Yeah.
direct mailing.
say as a result of
The
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 actual
modifications to the rules and regs.
regs.
Yep.
And the
Yeah, it
actual-
might be, how many do you think there are?
It's like 180 or
180,
so.
200.
It's not a lot.
It's
Not a
just,
lot.
yeah, it's just a,
And I think Jane can do a mail merge right off the system. We can just write
Okay.
the letter
Right.
and send it out.
okay.
I think that's much better. Thank you.
Correspondence.
The only thing I wanted to talk about, and Bill, maybe your input here, we missed our customer, Mr. Tversky. Yeah, last month. And he came back the following day after the meeting in the office, and,
I saw it in minutes.
yeah, no, he was there to try to pay 3 different accounts all of which were late, without late fee. He was as belligerent then as he was here. Anyway, we didn't, I think it might be prudent to have a motion to deny his request to adjust his bill, a formal motion. I think it's appropriate, don't you?
There's no harm to it.
Right, because I think,
Well, wait a second, at the last meeting, he presented a request,
yes,
so that, and it was referred to the board.
yes.
So you are correct, he has a motion to act on that.
To deny, formally deny his request to adjust his bill.
So moved.
Okay, I got a
Second.
motion, and a second. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now,
May I ask, is it still the policy if a customer comes in and has a bill with a late charge, and he wants to pay the bill and protest the late charge, do you accept the payment on the bill? without-
Absolutely.
Okay.
Our,
There was a time that.
we couldn't, we physically.
Years ago, you couldn't.
We couldn't because of the limitations of our billing and accounting system. That no longer exists.
Good.
So you can pay, if you owe $300 and you only have $15, you can give us $15 and,
but when he came in the following day after the meeting to pay his bills, all those bills were late.
yes.
They all got late charges. Is there any reason why he didn't pay? I mean, I can understand him, you know, not paying the one on 74 Cedar Street, but he had other ones where he didn't have an issue with. He should have paid those in advance.
I have no explanation. And also, as a matter of department policy, when someone comes in and is protesting the amount of the bill and for all the reasons that you guys are familiar with, and they're gonna go to the board, everybody in the office tells them that the bill should be paid in full before you go, but under no circumstances, no matter what the outcome, will the late fee be waived. They're told that up front because Jane and Kevin and certainly Matt knows that just doesn't happen. So he was told that in advance. Okay. And I can't explain why the other house on Cedar Street and the one on Tenbrook, he didn't pay because they were all due the same time.
And he knows that.
Yeah, he reads pretty well.
People think if you protest a bill, that just puts everything in abeyance until you tell them, oh, you owe it. And they think, oh, okay, now I'll pay it, which is a way of getting another 30 days or 60 days.
Right.
Do you know if we ever lived up in this area, or are these just investment properties?
I have no idea. I know that he trusts his tenants implicitly, tell them the truth all the time.
But he lives in, his mailing address is Brooklyn.
Absolutely.
So I have a feeling it's just, he also said he made it seem like he had someplace in Sullivan County, a camp or something.
Yeah, I couldn't follow all the things
What's
he's
his
done.
name again?
Traverse Point?
Dmitry Tversky.
It's Russian.
Oh, he's definitely a Russian immigrant, absolutely. I mean, that'd be my guess based on his accent. Although he's very well spoken, very well educated.
Yeah, well, he's electrical engineering, at least he claimed he was electrical engineer, and according to his electrical engineering, there was a spike in the meter that caused the increase in,
That's a good.
wow.
I like
There's no
that.
sense having it tested
He's creative.
because they're not consistent faults. It happens intermittently and the test won't prove anything. They have all the answers.
Using the test is the killer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Superintendent's report?
I have no questions.
My apologies for getting there late, but I was.
Two stamps.
That was because, that was a communication failure. I was out sick Thursday and Friday, so I didn't get it ready. So I wanted them hand delivered on Monday, because I knew if we put them in the mail on Monday, you wouldn't get them until Thursday. And Jane was flying, she was just getting everything done. And I came back from, and then she had them in the envelopes all stamped. The good news about that was it allowed Ryan, who delivered them, to put them in your mailbox.
No,
That's true.
really came separately from the mail, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, I went like,
How many people really know that they shouldn't do that?
oh,
You know,
yeah.
everybody puts stuff in our mailbox.
Yeah, and then when the post office sees it, and they get upset about it.
Okay.
So we ended up with about 16.5 inches of rain above normal or average.
We're only down a foot right now, which is amazing this time of year. And Kingston's been closed all month, well, almost all month. The nurse does a pretty good job of, kind of staying right on that.
Okay.
I have one thing that I don't know.
So we need the motion to accept.
Motion to accept.
Motion, Bob second, those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
The state DEC and DOH has just announced a source water protection plan that they're gonna make us all do. I mean, like, remember years ago we had to do the swaps?
Yeah.
Right, and they want them redone, but they want you to redo them. And they have a trial program that they're gonna, of the 500 water suppliers, or 3,000 community water suppliers around the state, they're gonna pick 30 to do this plan with you and for you. And so I'd like to apply. I don't know if we're gonna get, accepted or not, but I figured it's a pretty simple application. It's only gonna take a couple hours to do, might as well do it. And I know it's not required, but I would like a resolution maybe from the board supporting the application, because one of the questions is, one of the commitments you have to make is you'll dedicate the staff resources to do it, and maybe by resolution, this board would say that you would commit the necessary resources to, meet our obligations under the terms of the program.
So this is a special project
Yes.
that they're doing.
That's the better. Drinking water source water protection program. The state is launching an initiative to provide municipalities with information, resources, and tools to protect their drinking water sources. Obviously, it's cheaper to protect your water before it gets contaminants to get in than to remove them once they're in. It's cheaper all the way around.
No, that makes sense.
And so we're having, and they've done it, they did it 15, 20 years ago, and they haven't touched it since. And this is because of the whole unregulated contaminant drinking water thing with Newburgh. This has come to the fore, and how could we let this happen, and who wasn't watching, and whatever. So we have a unique issue in that we are one of those municipalities whose watershed is totally outside of our own control. It's not like the mayor can ask the planning board to zone and plan and land use regulate, because we're dependent on 2 or 3 other municipalities to do that. We're lucky in that Woodstock is the main one, and they have rather restricted zoning regulations where our watershed is. And they do that on purpose, and they like our watershed for that reason, because they want that rural character as part of who they are and what they do. That didn't work for Newburgh, where, the town of New Windsor and the town of Newburgh let them pave everything over, and that's why they're kind of in the mess that they're in. So I'm not sure we'd be selected, because our watershed's wholly contained in New York, so I'm not sure how the state feels about that. But if they're willing to do something that they're gonna mandate that we do on our own later, I think we might as well do it.
No,
No risk.
no, if they pick you, they paid for it and done it.
Correct.
And
I mean,
also you'll learn something from doing it.
correct, and no matter when we do it, whether we do it totally on our own or through the auspices of this program, it's still the same level of involvement on us. We either hire a consultant to do it, and we have to provide them the information, or we work with the state's consultant and do the same thing. So that was my only.
So by participating, we'll comply with the requirement of revising the
Yes.
source water protection plan.
Yeah, so that, it's kind of a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
Throw your hat in the ring and see what happens.
So how many people, how many municipalities are there?
30 out of
5,000?
3,000?
3,000, maybe 3,000.
We're doing 1% sample.
And yes, and they probably figured out their budget and figured out how many they could do. they're very explicit, they want to get a cross-section to go across the state, you know, surface water, groundwater. So